Good afternoon. Welcome to the Sioux Falls City Council informational meeting. Welcome to Carnegie. Today's date's Tuesday, October 28th. Take a personal point of privilege right away. It's my wife's birthday. Happy birthday, dear.
Happy birthday, Janelle. Yay.
If she's watching right now when I get home, she'll
She's 29 again,
yeah.
Right?
We have a very full agenda. We have to be done by 4:50 as we have a joint meeting with the Minnehaha County Commission at 5 o'clock. I'm going to head right into our Land Use Committee report. Councilor Rolfing.
Yes, thank you very much. And again, happy birthday, Janelle. We had a Land Use Committee on the 20th of October, and we had a good meeting. The main discussion was on residential parking. We had a complaint about a tractor being parked in a yard, and so we had a review from Paul Bangford, our Assistant City Attorney, of the ordinance 160.553, and that gives us. He told us commercial vehicles are not allowed to be parked in a residential neighborhood. He did reveal that, not reveal, but he told us that they kind of gave the benefit of the doubt to this owner with the tractor, indicating that they had talked to him and he'll probably be moving it, and they'll make it right. They don't have many complaints about tractors being in yards and which is a tractor and what isn't, whether it's a lawn or garden or farm tractor and that kind of thing. So they're working with it. And then we had some open discussion on research regarding solar energy farms, which I know we're going to be talking about later. But those were the two things that we discussed.
Questions for Councilor Rolfing? Seeing none, we'll move on to our City Council open discussion. I'll begin the discussion. Apparently back in 1979, the city didn't follow child labor laws, and they hired an individual straight while they were in junior high school, it appears. So I want to congratulate Lori Hogstad for 35 years of service to our city. She's done a fantastic job. Just a few different positions, currently our city clerk. So Lori, congratulations on 35 years of service. The other one I have is on Tuesday, November 11th, is the annual Veterans Day ceremonies held at Lincoln High School Auditorium. Always a great ceremony to honor our vets. We have at least three of us on the council as far as I know. So we all received invitations, and this is open to the public, so anybody that can attend, please do so to honor our vets. Councilors, any other open discussion? Councilor Staggers.
Yes, I think many of us on the City Council have received a lot of phone calls and emails dealing with the artwork on the snowplows. And I think there are basically two ways that we can take a look at this particular issue. One way is to look at it as a legal issue, in which we would have the City Attorney's Office involved in it. And a second way is a political issue, in which the City Council, since we make policy, would be involved in it. I think probably most citizens in Sioux Falls would say, this is a political issue because we are being contacted a lot. The City Council should be making the decision. And so I just have one question today in regard to it being made a legal issue. From the City Attorney's Office, why are we making it a legal issue?
Mr. Fifley, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Councilor Karski. Dave Fifley with the City Attorney's Office. Well, Councilor Staggers, to answer your question, it is a legal issue because of the constitutional implications involved in terms of we have a situation where, frankly, both sides are right. We have a freedom of exercise of religion issue, we have an Establishment Clause issue, and we have a free speech issue. And we are exploring every feasible option to try to come up with a solution to this from a legal standpoint that would satisfy the legal rights of both parties involved.
I guess a further question would be, to make it a legal issue, you have to somebody bringing up legal issues. Did the individual that viewed the snowplow come in and say, we feel this is a constitutional issue or this is a legal issue and we're going to take action? Did they say that, or why?
The issue was, it was an informal complaint regarding an Establishment Clause issue And all these rights are under the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. They apply to the states and also to us as a political subdivision. So, yes, that was how it came to our office.
So did they say they were going to sue us, or we're going to take you to court, or what did they say exactly?
Just there was expressed concerns. I didn't take the call personally, Counselor, but they expressed concerns regarding the Establishment Clause and the fact that 2 out of the 45 plows had a religious message on them. And so we were certainly tasked as a legal office with trying to explore a possible solution since both sides have legitimate rights and concerns here.
Would you agree with what I just said? This can also be a political issue too, and should be dealt with politically, not necessarily legally.
I would respectfully disagree, Counselor, because of the hundreds of cases that I've read on this. Oftentimes the elected officials would come out and make some type of pronouncement on how they felt about a particular issue that was similar, where you had these different First Amendment rights involved. And I did not see one case anywhere where that pronouncement officially from a governing body really aided the situation. I respectfully submit to you. I'm not trying to diminish your role by any means, but certainly, ultimately, if we don't come to a resolution, a court of law would come to that solution. So,
well, I guess when I take a look at constitutional history, this has not always been a legal issue. It's been an issue that elected bodies have been involved in. And so beginning in 1947, after the World War II, is when we start having the court getting involved in religious issues and making them legal issues instead of allowing them to continue as being political issues. And I don't know, I guess my feeling is that until, somebody really wants to take legal action against us, we should have this be a political issue. And I think probably many members of the council would say, hey, the majority of people in Sioux Falls, they feel that what's going on right now is just really inappropriate. We want to have our children to be able to, on their own, do this. And now if we try to take that away from them, it's sending a bad message to them. Painting something on a plow, a kid doing it, I mean, most people are saying there's nothing wrong with that.
Councilor Jameson, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, it only warrants a little discussion here by all of us, I suppose. We've all received the same emails and the same conversations around the table. Dave, the emails that we're getting, I'm not sure that you're seeing them, but there's a lot of support for us to leave what's on the plow, leave it alone. If they want to paint over it, they can paint over it, but we're not changing it. Kind of an attitude that I picked up on. But just to be clear with us, there was no policy that the City Council set regarding the use of these plows being painted, none of that.
no.
The direction of this solution or this issue that's become something in the public is not for this body to decide, unless we want to create a policy allowing it, or which would be a problem from what I'm sensing. But it's interesting how the public perceives us as though we decided it was okay to have this removed. And I just want to make sure that you could shed some light on it, as long as you're here, on the hot box that says, well, the City Council did not pass an ordinance or a resolution authorizing or denying this use.
That is correct, Councilor Jameson. You as a governing body did not set any specific policy. No, that is correct. And again, these issues are a clash of 3 different rights recognized under the First Amendment of our Constitution. The Bill of Rights was intended to be a check on the majority rule, what the majority feels is correct, and to, in essence, recognize individual rights. And here we have a unique clash of individual rights. And as many courts who have grappled with it have said, it's one of the most sensitive aspects of our nation's public life. There are cases almost on a biweekly basis that come out that can go either way. Each case depends on its own specific facts, and as luck would have it, we do not have any case that we can find regarding a paint the plow issue like this. So it's very unique.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, also, I would just say that I think a lot of people are contacting us because, you know, they feel that, hey, we're still a democracy, that we have, you know, representatives on the city council that are supposed to represent our views. And so, hey, they're just contacting us and letting us know their views. And it seems like, you know, that many people in Sioux Falls feel that we should continue with the artwork on the snow plows. And it's very important that we have people contacting us instead of just necessarily relying on the legal process. Because every time we rely on the legal process, we have judges involved. These are unelected officials. And it's always good to try to have elected officials involved, to have democracy involved. Because every time we have courts making decisions, they're unelected officials, and democracy suffers just a little bit.
Councilor Rolfing?
Thank you. Councilor Sagers, as much as I like to agree with you, I will. But again, not everything is a political issue. And I think this is one that is not political. It's been taken out of our situation. It's a legal issue and legal only at this point. I'm sorry to say that some people have objections to the basics that our country was based on. I agree with you on that point, but it is something I think we need to leave to the legal people at this point and stay out of it. As much as I would like to delve into it, I think it's best left alone. Thank you.
And I think at this point right now, if you want to believe everything you see on Facebook, the painting will not be removed from the plows. So at this point, nothing's going to change from the way things are. So,
but if I can just say, I think it's important for the city attorney's office to be aware that there are many citizens in Sioux Falls who are exercising their democratic right and letting us know they are in favor of keeping them on. I don't think we should just, you know.
And I think that message was heard loud and clear by the mayor and every city councilor here that people are in favor of keeping that on there. And unless we want to change or create some sort of policy as a council, if a councilor wants to create a resolution or an ordinance, that would be up to them to bring it to the body for that to happen.
Well, once again, I think it's important that the city administration is well aware that there are many citizens and also some of us on the city council who are very concerned about this.
Pretty sure they are. Mr. Fifley.
Yes, Councilor Karski, we've been receiving, certainly we've had discussions with many of you. We've received a lot of the same input that all of you have, and we do appreciate that, and we have heard the message loud and clear, and that's why we're doing everything feasible that we can explore legally to try and keep the student artwork on the plows and yet respect the rights of all the parties.
I think it's also important to remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Fifley, Attorney Fifley, I'm sorry, our legal counsel, that when we give these plows to these people, we do not tell them what they can and cannot. They're free to express whatever they want to put on the plows. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilor, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Just one question. David, has Public Works Street Department contacted your office to maybe take a look at this program and suggest some changes so that we don't run into this again?
Oh, that's certainly being discussed, Councilor. And the issue always is, as indicated by Councilor Karski, we don't want to get into a situation where we're regulating someone's speech either. It's a very delicate balance. And after this year's, fortunately, we'll have about 10 months to maybe develop something unique and different from what we have now and maintain the program and yet respect the rights of everyone. It's a unique balancing test.
And that's what I'm hoping for, is that we can continue this program. I think it's a really great program that the kids enjoy. Thank you.
I'm going to move us on from this topic. Any other open discussion that we want to discuss or bring to the council? Good, because we have a first presentation is our 3 internal audit reports. Welcome, Mr. Oaksel, our internal audit manager.
Good afternoon, Council. I understand we have a limited time, so I'll go very quick. I'll give you the headlined version of this. This answers the question here. This external quality control review answers the question of who audits the auditors, and we had a more detailed discussion with the audit committee last week. We had what we call a peer review on the first week of October. We had 2 auditors come from out of state. One was from the El Paso. He was the city auditor at El Paso, and the other peer reviewer is from Seattle, and he's the internal audit manager for Sound Transit Agency. They were here from Monday until Friday that week. They reviewed our training, our files, our policy and procedures, everything that we do as auditors, and they concluded that we comply with professional standards of internal auditing. Basically, you can get one of 3 grades. You can have a full compliance, which is an A. You can have a satisfactory or partial, which would be like a C. Or you can have a do not meet the professional standards, which would be an F. We got an A. We got a full compliance, and we're very happy about that. They had a couple of suggestions for us, and we discussed that with the audit committee. And we agreed with their suggestions, and we'll be implementing those. And we very much appreciated the work of the peer reviewers. It cost the city about $3,000. If we would have had say a Big Four accounting firm or some other consultant do it, it probably would have been between probably $10,000 and $20,000 to do that. And in this case, we just paid for the travel expenses for the peer reviewers, and their agencies volunteered the time of these 2 auditors to come to Sioux Falls. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Councilor Rolfing?
I'll just make a quick comment that this is something that I kind of started back about 2 years ago now. Who audits the auditors? And I am very proud of the way that these people went through the audit and the peer review. And we should be proud as a city that we have this part of the as part of the council, and we'll continue it and continue the good work.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions? Councilor Jameson.
As the former chair of the audit committee for many years, working with Rich, and the comment came up from Councilor Rolfing about who audits the auditor. I remember hearing that and going, well, that's a very good question, and this program is really good. And it's interesting to see Rich stand up here and say some of the same comments that directors have had to say in front of the audit committee, saying that they've had some opinions and reviews, and they're going to make those recommendations, they're going to implement them. But I think this is just a great thing for the audit division to go through, to have somebody else from another municipality come through and talk to Rich and implement ideas that they had and cover all the aspects of it. I think it was just a great idea from the get-go from Councilor Rolfing. I'm just glad to see it come through, and I'm glad to see you got an A. Good job.
And the peer review leader from El Paso, he'd done many of these peer reviews. He said this was his favorite place to be. He was very impressed with the courtesy and the friendliness of people in Sioux Falls. He really enjoyed his time here. So,
Like the food too.
Yeah, he liked the food.
All righty.
Okay, now we get to our audit reports. We did an audit of citywide payroll. The reason we did this audit is because we hadn't done one since 2008, and there have been 2 major changes in the payroll. We have a new software this year that we implemented, and then we also had the retirement of a key employee involved in payroll, and we had a new person taking over. So we thought it was very timely to look at especially the internal controls over payroll. The city spends, well, last year we spent about $73 million on payroll expenses. So it's a major part of the operating budget. And we want to make sure that we had, first of all, that we're using leading practices in regard to payroll. That was our first audit objective. We looked at past payroll audit recommendations to make sure that they'd been implemented, or if they hadn't been implemented, if they were still applicable. And then we reviewed the key risks. We looked at the controls, and then we did some testing of those controls. Our overall conclusion was that we didn't have any audit recommendations. The previous audit recommendations had been implemented. or no longer applicable with the new procedures. We identified risks, we identified the controls that are in place to mitigate those risks, and then we did some testing. For example, we looked at it, we did an audit test to look for ghost employees, which would be fictitious employees that might be on the payroll register. When we did that test, we found no evidence of what we call ghost employees. And we also looked at sick leave abuse. We analyzed all the sick leave used in the first 6 months of this year, looking for trends of the abuse of sick leave. We didn't see any sign of sick leave abuse. And they also did some detailed testing to see that we had proper deductions were being taken and proper calculations. So we took a statistical sample of payroll. So all in all, it worked out very well. We didn't have any audit recommendations. And so we felt good about that the new Munis payroll system is implemented with proper controls in place. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
All right.
And just for our audience at home, all these reports are on our internal audit website, including that peer review report. As soon as they're approved by the audit committee, we put those out on the web, so anybody can take a look at the report in detail if they want to.
I got a quick question,
Councilor
Mr. Chair.
Staggers?
Yeah, has there been any thought about having a private company taking over our payroll, like ADP and things like that?
I'm not aware of any discussion on that. I think we're probably better off doing it in-house. I know many companies do outsource it. I'm not aware of many municipalities that do that. I know private companies often find it more cost-effective.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think doing it in-house, I think makes more sense for the City of Sioux Falls with 1,150 full-time employees. And
So how many employees do we have dealing with the payroll?
When our key employee, Lori, that's pretty much her full-time job in HR is processing the payroll and handling all of that. And the departments, they're filling out electronic timesheets, and then they submit those timesheets. We're on a biweekly basis. But we do all the tax reporting ourselves, doing those quarterly tax returns. Finance gets involved with that, and certainly that's not unusual in private industry to outsource payroll.
Yeah.
And where it makes sense to do that. Yeah.
Just something else I just thought
great
of.
question.
And that is, the City of Sioux Falls has its paychecks every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Many businesses have it once a month or the 15th of the month and the last of the month.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems a little confusing to not have a certain date, like the 15th of the month and the 31st of the month or whatever.
Yeah, we do it. It's every other Friday, so it's 26 times a year.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
I guess I've never encountered another business that does this, but
I don't think it's that unusual to do it bi-weekly. Yeah. Basically, you can do it monthly. You can do it
bi-monthly,
twice a month, which would be 24 times a year. The way we do it, 26 times a year, every other Friday. So, I think if we went to a monthly, I think a lot of employees' personal budgeting would be thrown out of whack because they're used to budgeting on every 2 weeks getting their paychecks.
Thinking bi-monthly, the 15th. So.
Yeah.
You know when you get paid. You don't have to, well, is this the second, the month, second? Well, anyway.
Yeah. There's different ways to do it, obviously. Yeah. Okay, our last report is on mobile devices, cell phones, and also the long distance. We spend about $300,000 a year on cell phones and other devices, modems, and whatnot. We have a breakdown on page 3 of the report of the which departments, how many cell phones they have, and then and how many other devices, the modems and whatnot. There's a few employees that get a stipend in lieu of a city-issued phone, but most of the employees in the cell phone program get a city-issued phone. And I believe there was, I think it's about 500 of those phones, city-issued, 541. People that get a stipend get $20 a month. And we did do a calculation when we did this audit of would it make sense for the city just to go We just get rid of the city-issued phones and go to a stipend. And we calculate that we're saving about $90,000 a year by keeping the present system, not going to a full stipend. So we think that's a good decision of the city. The main provider for the cell phones is Verizon. And as far as the long distance, we're using CenturyLink. And we're talking about the long distance for the office phones, the ones that are on your desk, not the cell phones. And we concluded that our purchasing department is doing a very good job when they're working with the Verizon to get the best possible plan to keep the cost where they should be, and doing a very good job of managing that. And when we looked at the cell phone or the long distance charges from CenturyLink, we looked at a sample of bills. They were calculated correctly. We looked for examples of abuse of long distance calls. We didn't see any signs of abuse of that. And so we thought that was being handled correctly. We did have 2 recommendations. Right now, the process of getting a cell phone is rather informal. It's basically email from the supervisor to finance to get the cell phone issued. We recommended having a actual form, a business justification form, and the purchasing department had already created a form. They let us look at that, and so we have some sort of documentation of why they need a city-issued phone, and it's signed by the employee and the supervisor. So, and then the other problem was that when somebody leaves the city, there's a checklist they fill out. They have to turn in their keys and their badge and all that sort of thing, and then eventually it gets to HR. They're the last stop for that. We wanted that form, that exiting checklist, to have a line for a cell phone, if they have a city-issued cell phone, what the status is, like if somebody's getting it, a new employee's getting it, or if it's being turned in. And we wanted that on the new form. And then we also discovered that some of the employees were using old forms, old exiting checklists. They weren't using the most current form, so we let HR know that, and they're going to correct that issue so that people are just using the latest exiting checklist, and that there's an indication on the checklist, okay, what happened to the city-issued phone? And so we just thought better documentation would result from both of these 2 recommendations, and management agreed with both of those recommendations. So, are there any questions?
Just one. We're talking about straight cell phone use here. What about the smartphones? I mean, how do you differentiate on the?
Well, they're part of that city-issued program. Yeah, city-issued phones can be the smartphones, or just a plain old a dumb phone, if you will. But yeah, it's part of the program. So.
You of us have one of each. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Do we need to make a motion to accept these?
No.
That was done at your committee level.
That's
so.
right.
No, the audit committee approves them, and then we simply inform the city council.
So, all right, if no other questions, we will thank you very much, Mr. Oaksel.
All right, thank you.
Very well done. Our Main Avenue Road Diet, this is going to be led by Brent. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. I'm Brent O'Neill with Community Development. Happy to be here to give you a snapshot of where we are with the Main Avenue Road Diet. It was only a few months ago, probably early June, that we came to speak with the council and ask for your blessing to test out a project that we were pretty excited about. We've heard 4 years, and more recently with our downtown planning process, a lot of desire for the city to look at changes to Main Avenue and Dakota Avenue, particularly converting the one-way into 2 ways. Our team has looked at that multiple times. It does continue to pose operational challenges, but we did want to work with some options in place to test options and address those concerns and comments that we hear from time to time. So as we do that, we did begin in July a conversion of Main Avenue from 3 lanes to 2. We wanted to look at angled parking on that street. We wanted to add additional sidewalk and bump out space for pedestrian amenities, and that also allowed for the narrowing of pedestrian crossings. We did have a survey in place and did solicit comments outside of that survey as well, but gathering the feedback from the public and the users was a very important part of our pilot project. We're now getting to October 31, which was the end date of the authorization that you gave us. We wanted to give you again that snapshot on kind of where things are now, and then tell you a little bit about where we are going forward.
Hi, I'm Dina Knudsen. I'm in Public Works Engineering. 3 businesses utilized the bump out areas. Additional parking spaces were provided. The diagonal parking added roughly about 70 parking spaces to the east side of Main Avenue. Vehicular speeds were calmed. The average speed was reduced by 8%, which brought the speed down closer to what the speed limit was posted as. Vehicles exceeding 30 miles an hour was reduced also by 40%, which was roughly about 120 fewer per day. Travel times were nominally affected. This was a visual observation. There was no studies done or anything. It was just monitoring traffic as it flowed. And there were no crashes attributed to the changes of Main Avenue. The feedback that we got was primarily positive. The comments were monitored as they came in regularly, and if there were any issues that we could address and resolve on the fly, we certainly tried to do that. The changes that we made, the adverse comments did diminish quite a bit, and then as the survey went on and people got a little more comfortable, and as the changes that we did made, the feedback did become a little more positive towards the end.
I'm going to wrap up with just a couple thoughts about that feedback. We did do kind of a cursory review. As Dina said, we did monitor for concerns, but we didn't do a drill down version of that data until the survey or the pilot project's over. So we'll be doing that starting next week. But the majority of responses were positive. About 2/3 of them came in on the positive side. The majority of the comments are up on the screen. Travelers did feel that the traffic really wasn't affected all that much. Pedestrians did feel safer finding a spot to park. Took less time than before with those extra spots. And the businesses and the people who use those businesses felt it was a positive impact as well. A couple comments on the other side of that. One was tied to parking time limits. We did remove meters on Main Avenue during that, and in its place, we put 90-minute parking up instead of the meters. And one of the comments that did surface was about that time limit. And that's something that really was just part of the pilot in order to logistically do it the best way possible. And then the other had to do with just the flow in and out of the Block 11 ramp. That did create a little bit of commentary as well, so we're going to continue to look at that. I did want to share just a couple comments. We did pull these quotes from our survey results. The first one, it brings Main Avenue up to the level of Phillips Avenue, more appealing. I think it'll revitalize that street and the businesses, make it permanent. The second one, as a resident of Main Avenue, I greatly appreciate the efforts being made. I feel these changes are necessary and vital in order to promote a safe and appealing downtown environment. With those comments, we kind of want to leave you with our proposed next steps. Again, with that authorization coming up on Friday, we do want to start taking the pilot away on Monday. That means removing some of the street striping and some of the temporary barriers and visuals that have been in place. We will be recommending implementing again in spring of 2015. We'll have to use this winter to look at those results, do some of our own analysis, and make plans and recommendations through the winter. And then before we come back in spring, we want to visit with the council again to request your continued support of the road diet, make additional adjustments, and then start planning for long-term implementation and making permanent adjustments. With that, Dina or I would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Councilor Rolfing?
So what I'm hearing you tell me is that you're going to take everything away that we've done and make it 3 lanes again?
We are, and the reason for that, being a pilot and being temporary in nature, we didn't plan for how this would work in winter, snow conditions, how plows would work around it. We also use temporary paint and other striping materials. So it just really, as we designed it, isn't feasible to take it into the winter.
That seems like a lot of work and a lot of extra expense to take it down and put it back up again. When we've got extra parking and things like that for the businesses, they're not going to use those bump outs. I wonder if we could consider leaving it in 2 lanes and not having to move it back and forth. I think that's going to be confusing maybe to the population, and it might be easier to just leave it and see what happens over the winter as another diet, test.
Right.
Diets. I wish I could get on one, but go ahead.
Thank you, and I appreciate those comments. We'll make sure we talk about that and see what options we do have. I know long-term, it wouldn't be our intent that it would be a seasonal thing, that if we did do something permanent, it would be a year-round
Yeah, that's what
activity.
we're getting such a good response on it. It seems like we're tending toward long-term. Maybe we don't tear it down and put it back up once or twice more before we just make it permanent.
Sure.
Anyway.
We'll continue to see if there are options.
Councilor Erickson?
Is it something that we can, just extend another month and then try to make it permanent sooner than spring of 2015? Just the jockeying around keep it on a holiday diet until the end of November, and then we can move it to a more permanent before a lot of snow falls. I just think it's confusing to the drivers of removing it and taking it back, and I kind of see a lot of nods. I just don't know if that's something that we're...
If I could, before you answer that, Brent, when you said the removing and taking, I looked around and I think most of the counselors were nodding their heads like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Like Councilor Rolfing said, we're shuffling back and forth between the two. If it isn't a safety issue, I would encourage you to do everything, or maybe a snow removal issue or whatever the case may be. But if it is practical to leave it up, I don't see where the council would fight you on that at this point. And I'd encourage you to find a way to make that happen. Okay. Any other comments from the council?
I might, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Erpenbach.
I just would add to that I'm not real excited about saying in the spring, yeah, let's put it back up. If you're going to take it down now, then we're leaving it down in my mind. Because, one of the biggest complaints I got was how rush hour was really congested. And now what I'm hearing from you is that folks are saying that they got used to it, they kind of planned their day around it, it was okay, and now we're going to take it down and it'll go back to what it was, and then you're going to ask us in the spring, can't we just put it up again? And I'm going to say no, because I don't like the switching back and forth. I'm uncomfortable with that. I don't think it's fair to drivers. I think they've kind of changed their lifestyle, and we're all I think we need to bring it to council and talk about making it a permanent deal. If council says, no, we hated the pilot, it needs to go away, that's fine, but I'm hearing these side conversations, and I'm hearing pretty much support for this thing to stay, and I would be uncomfortable with changing it back and forth every time we change seasons. That's just my 2 cents.
I think our point is made. So, Councilor Kiley?
The temporary paint and striping that you used, will that not last through the winter months?
I couldn't speak to the specs. Maybe Dina could. I know it has a very short life expectancy. Or actually, Heath Hofteaser will speak to that.
And I guess as long as Heath is coming up too, if you were to strip it, use permanent painting, what kind of temperatures do you need? Have we gone past those days already?
Yeah, Heath Hofteaser, principal traffic engineer for the City of Sioux Falls. A couple of the concerns we have with what we put down we did, in order to keep the materials that we used in a reasonable manner, about under 10,000, it was like 9,000 we spent on the delineators and the paint materials. We tried to use things that we could remove if it wasn't a successful project. And where we have the delineators, the way that the adhesive, the way they're down on the road, there's a good chance the plows could push them over, and that's something that we would have to keep an eye on if we tried to go through the winter. The current tape that's in place is like a temporary road construction tape that's used, that's easy to take back up also. There's some materials we've been using. If you look out on 8th Street, we just put some bicycle sharrows down today where it's this polyurea material that we've been using from 3M that can be put down into sub-zero temperatures if need be. So, there's options there. It's just if that's what we want to do, we have to probably change some of what we have out there in order to make it permanent and make it last. So one other concern I'll just bring up too is in order to better address some of the comments we had too, we were looking at some possible adjustments this coming spring where we were going to look at changing the angle of parking to make it more visible to back out of the parking spots. And we were also looking at possibly trying to incorporate a bike lane into the route too. So those are some of the other things we were looking at. And that was part of taking it down, was being able to incorporate that back into it in the spring. So it's something that we'll just have to talk about or try to decide what we want to do, I guess. So I don't think anybody's really against it. None of us. I would rather not take it down and put it back up. So.
Okay. Thank you, Heath.
Yep.
All righty. We will move into our arterial street funding. Councilor Anderson. Just a reminder that we do have a county commission joint meeting right after this, and we need 10 minutes to turn around the layout configuration here and get ready for that. So we have about 7 minutes to address this issue at this point.
You got the stopwatch started? Okay, thank you. We, the City Council, are the stewards of policies and programs for the City of Sioux Falls. Each councilor has areas that they focus on. The city programs are created to make life better for our community. With that being said, I'm requesting that the City Council and the administration revisit the arterial street funding program. The assumptions that the funding model was based on have dramatically changed since 2009. The model was based on the pace of development demonstrated prior to the economy's decline in late 2008. No one or group could have foreseen the dramatic economic decline or the impact it would have on development within the city, and ultimately impacting the arterial street program funding. I understand the administration has already initiated a study regarding this topic and request that the council schedule a work session and have the Public Works Director, Mark Cotter, attend to present and provide additional insight to the nuances of the program. Just to speak to the program quickly, some of the things that the arterial road funding has done up to this point: 10,000 acres opened up on the East Side Sanitary Program, development street programs, $5 million a year. There's a $10 million shortfall. What are some of the long-term solutions with the developers? That definitely needs to be discussed. Just some of the information of what this arterial road fund is about. The ordinance increased the second penny by 1/8 of a cent. That money at the time was unencumbered and was not being used by the city. The ordinance did establish a water distribution platting fee and arterial street platting fee. The platting fees were contingent on that 1/8 of a cent being added to this funding. The City Council did pass a resolution to use that funding and expand the arterial street program. The estimated revenues that were supposed to come from this fund was $6 million per year from the platting fees. Over 5 years, it should have generated $30 million. The 1/8 of a cent sales tax revenue was supposed to generate $4 million a year. Over 5 years, $20 million. This graph will show you the actual and the projected of those funds, and it'll show some of the shortfalls that has happened during this time. In the blue is the actual 1/8 of a cent arterial street funding. In the red is the projected 1/8 of a cent arterial street funding. Once again, over that 5 years, it was projected that it would generate $20 million. Up to this time, we're right around $18 million. Now taking a look at the platting fees, projected versus actual. The actuals are in blue, the projected are in red. Unfortunately, over the 5 years, the projected $30 million to be raised by this has only come to $3.3 million. This shows the total dedicated funding for this program, and you can see the shortfalls. I don't think I have to speak to it any more on that. Basically, what I'm asking is just to have the City Council, the administration, take a look at this. Working with the developers, I feel that we can still continue the program, but I feel that right now the balance needs to be readjusted. So any questions at this time?
Questions of Councilor Anderson? Councilor Urbanbach?
Question about the study. I hadn't heard anything about a study yet. The administration is doing some kind of study of the program?
I'd let Mark Cotter answer that. I've spoken to Mark a few times on this.
So what you're asking, Councilor Anderson, is that we as a council look at it before the study is complete, or do you want to do that in conjunction with what the administration is doing? What's your
I think we should do it in conjunction with. This was something that was designed and developed and then brought to the City Council. Once again, we are the policy writers. So this is a policy or a program that I feel that it is enacted by the City Council. So we are involved, and that we should be more involved now with that policy as far as rewriting this program.
No, I totally get that. I just don't want to be duplicating things that are happening already. And I really don't want us to start down a road that we don't know what's there. If there's a survey already being done, then let's use that knowledge that comes out of that before we start making any big decisions about changes. I guess my other thing would be, what conversations have you had with developers, and how are they going to be involved in this sort of process that we're talking about?
Well, once again, as this program was started, the developers were part of writing this whole program together. So I would still like to hear their input on how this program should work. And, you know, like I said, once again, this is something that has been done jointly. And I don't think that we should exclude any party that is involved in this program at this time.
Cool.
And if I could I ask Mark Cotter to step up and just
Please.
Talk about the
We have
study.
about 1 minute, Mr. Cotter.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Counselor. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. We have engaged the Home Builders Association in some of the questions that they have. We think it's appropriate to evaluate the program. It's been in place now since January 1 of 2009, so we're in place for about 5.5 years. The revenues on the platting fees have not come in as expected, and that methodology was established based on historical platting numbers. But as we've gone through the recession, we've started to see a lot more sustainable development, a lot more bedrooms put on less land, that it directly affects the platting fees.
I'm going to have to cut us off. I'm sorry. When do you expect the survey to be done, or the study?
We've just begun the discussion, and so I'd be more than happy to, at least in a working session, provide some context to the council on a number of other policy changes that were taking place. And so, but I would expect that really after the first of the year, we've already retained a proposal from a national consultant that helped us first to make sure that our methodology was technically sound and legally defensible. We'd bring them back in and have a good working discussion on this topic.
I'm going to make a suggestion, and unless somebody objects to it before my assistant city clerk has a conniption, we have to adjourn this meeting, that we wait until after the first of the year, if that's okay with Councilor Anderson, to schedule this working session and have an update from from Mark Cotter, the first meeting in January, as to what the status of that study is, so we can have something to talk about. Okay? And I'm going to adjourn this meeting for now.